Stanisław Barszczak, God in the Big Bang, my greatest shot. Dear internet users, today I would like to tell you about my most successful photo that I keep in my memory from my happy childhood. As a 9-year-old, I'm walking along a path on the edge of a forest, a park in our village, accompanied by 2 cousins. Never forget to take pictures of the moment of great emotion. Here I would say, but we go straight to the heart of this essay now. As I said, some scientists say in the essay before, some scientists say the universe didn't have a beginning. Some theologians say the universe didn't need a beginning. You press your mind right away. Did he not need God? Since the moment is infinite, then how do we define the flow of time, especially in the early stage of expansion of the universe? In modern cosmology, scientists are constantly emphasizing the new theories on this subject, taking into account the so-called time loop. My answer to this issue of the appearance of providence, God's interference in time, I explain here on the basis of the modern theory of inflation of the universe in the early stage of its expansion. Cosmological inflation is a cosmological hypothesis proposed by Alan Guth 30 years ago. Guth's first step to developing his theory of inflation occurred at Cornell in 1978 when he attended a lecture by Robert Dicke about the flatness problem of the universe. Dicke explained how the flatness problem showed that something significant was missing from the Big Bang theory at that time. The fate of the universe depended on its density. Very important issue. According to Alan Guth, the early universe went through a phase of rapid expansion due to negative pressure, which I will talk about in a moment. This expansion can be modeled by a non-zero cosmological constant. And the universe already then could have been flat. And only then did it expand gradually. And now the universe can be in the shape of a saddle, which in the latest theories adopts the image of a flower cap, as I would say, whatever you prefer to call it, and is constantly expanding, the universe expanding. The shape of a balloon or burning ice cream that we can eat that to taste it depicts a permanently expanding universe. The latter, according to the latest theories, resembles a trumpet cylinder. Imagine that negative forces are also realized in the Big Bang. We have strange forces in the early universe, but strangely enough, in the earliest phase of the universe near the Big Bang, a strange tuning of the universe took place. Here I see God, and I would like to talk about it in a moment. There was a so-called spontaneous breaking of symmetry at the beginning of the universe. As the temperature of the universe decreased, particles headed for a vacuum. Particles of energy, matter, see theory of Einstein, equation, matter and energy, began to diverge. We are waiting for the latest elementary particles accelerators in Swiss, Italy now, in which we could show the threshold conditions of the universe. In order to show the movement of elementary particles, those that make up the universe. Science is revealing grand unification theories now. Thus, at high energies, it is impossible to distinguish between the weakened electrical forces and other forces. The theory of inflation is based on the specific shape of the Higgs field diagram, on the appearance of extraordinary quantum phenomena in the early stage of the universe. And so scientists here are showing a graph at the top of which a place is formed here, called the false vacuum point. What is going on? Imagine that the thermal vibrations stop and the ball drops. It collapses at the Higgs field, nulls, and does not roll down immediately. Although the energy density is high, there is either a small limit or an almost flat field. Therefore, a state of false vacuum is created, the state of a momentarily lowest energy. This state is metastable. If you wait a while, the false void will collapse into the real one. Stephen Hawking brought up an example of roulette here. Another question is whether God wins the casinos of human civilization. The dealer moves the ball. The scientists show it on the chart. The ball will either slowly roll onto the cycle of vacuum, or as a result of a quantum process called tunneling, a sudden transition from one state to another, it will appear on the other side of the limit and the vacuum will also occur. Until then, the universe is in a false vacuum. Theory of a false vacuum. It has two very interesting properties. Its density does not change as it expands, and it creates a negative pressure. The fact that its density does not change until it disintegrates is so strange that all other substances except the true vacuum cannot be expanded without diminishing in density. A false vacuum can increase its volume many times over and still be just as dense. Negative pressure is even more counterintuitive. If you put a false vacuum bubble in a real vacuum, for example, cosmic vacuum, the pressure on the outside of the bubble will be greater than the pressure inside. The bubble will collapse into the black hole under the pressure of ordinary vacuum. According to the general theory of relativity, any form of energy produces a gravitational field. Pressure is also a form of energy. Although under normal conditions the field from pressure can be completely neglected. In the early universe, however, pressures were so high that the effects of gravity cannot be ignored. Positive pressure creates a positive gravity field attraction. Negative pressure like an impulse to repel. This leads to a push away. The fact that the universe was filled with a false vacuum created a tremendous expansion force. Interestingly, it acted as if there was a large cosmological constant, a force called anti-gravity. Under the influence of this force, the universe began to expand rapidly, and since the density of the false vacuum did not decrease, it expanded faster and faster. There has been an exponential increase in the volume of the universe. This is what is so called inflation. Inflation, although it started only 10 till 34 seconds after the Big Bang and lasted about 10 till 32 seconds, is the answer to all the problems I have highlighted. I would like to highlight. The exponential growth of the universe meant that the initial conditions of the universe could be almost anything as long as there was sufficient field for a false vacuum to form and inflation to begin. When calculations are made on the basis of the Big Bang theory, it comes to the conclusion that there would be a whole class of objects unobserved today in this quantum mechanic geometry. The most famous is the so-called magnetic monopoly. If the standard theory is correct, the Big Bang would produce magnetic monopoles, particles with an unipolar field, not two poles. On cosmological chart, scientists illustrate the problem of the so-called homogeneity and isotropy of the universe. The solution of the homogeneity problem lies in the equation for the event horizon, Hubble radius. It is a function of a parameter a time, the distance between two fixed points. The time will increase over time as the universe expands. It is different for the periods before and after recombination, that is before and after the formation of atoms in the universe. This problem of homogeneity arises when analyzing the cosmic background radiation, or the afterglow after the Big Bang. If you point the antenna directly into space, you will receive information that the background radiation has a temperature of 2.7 K. If you move the antenna to the right, you will get the same result. If to the left, the same one. The entire universe is filled with an evenly relict radiation of the same temperature. Not exactly the same temperature, but the fluctuations are negligible. The conclusion was that the resulting universe had to be surprisingly homogeneous. The temperature had to be the same everywhere. It seems to be no wonder, after all. So, even if the temperature was not the same everywhere, it would quickly settle down to some values. If you put a bottle of cold water into the bowl with hot water, no hot and cold areas will be created. The temperature will naturally equalize. It should be the same in the early universe. Well, it turns out not. The notion of an event horizon appears here. The event horizon is the maximum distance a light signal can travel since the Big Bang. The event horizon circles around each point its Hubble volume. Since no information can travel faster than light, an area that is more than the event horizon away from another, that is not inside the Hubble volume of the other area, cannot directly affect it in any way. If these regions are more than two event horizons apart, the Hubble volumes have no common points, and absolutely nothing that happens in one region affects the other. Our present Hubble volume, that is the entire observable universe, contains 105 regions that were disconnected at the time of the cosmic background radiation was generated. In other words, that was inside on event horizon during the formation of the background radiation is now approximately 0.8 angular in size, while the background radiation is identical across the sky. So, it could not be that temperature had established itself everywhere and in all directions. It must have been a cosmic accident for all 10,000 regions to have the same temperature. This is a serious drawback. It looks as if someone has fine-tuned the initial conditions of the universe. Here I would say that God created the world. I did not need to correct the universe. Cosmology continues to reveal new problems. For example, the problem of flatness of the universe. The shape of our universe strongly depends on the parameter omega equal to the ratio of density of the universe to the critical density needed to stop the expansion of the universe to flat. Compare the current Hubble constant Observational data and theoretical predictions limit the omega, earliest universe density, value today to be between 0.2 and 2. It follows that the universe is not very curved and close to critical. This does not seem strange until it turns out that omega changes in time. The initial value of omega, energy density equation to matter, was very unstable, and any deviation from the value of 1 would increase rapidly over time. I repeat what I said again, quoting the Standard and other Big Bang models. Negative vacuum density does not change with expansion, creates a negative pressure. Pressure is also dislated, is also a form of energy. All day, under normal conditions, the field from pressure can be completely neglected. In the early universe, however, pressures were so high that the effect of gravity cannot be ignored. Positive pressure creates a positive gravity field attraction. Negative pressure leads to repulsion. The fact that the universe was filled with a false vacuum created a tremendous expansion force. Interestingly, it acts, as I said, as if there was a large cosmological constant, a force called antigravity. Under the influence of this force, the universe began to expand rapidly, and since the density of the false vacuum did not decrease, it expanded faster. There has been exponential increase in the volume of the universe. This is what I call inflation. So, is our search for God too narrow? Newton spoke. This most beautiful system of the sun, planet, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. And from true lordship it follows that the true God is living, intelligent, and powerful. From the other perfections, that he is supreme, and supremely perfect. He is eternal and infinite, omnipotent and omniscient. That is, he endures from eternity to eternity, and he is present from infinity to infinity. He rules all things, and he knows all things that happen or can happen. He rules all things not as the world soul, but as the Lord of all. And because of his dominion, he is called Lord God Pantocrator. For God is relative words and has reference to servant, and Godhood is the lordship of God, not over his own body, as is supposed by those for whom God is the world soul, but over servants. It seems probable to me that God in the beginning formed matter and in solid, massy, hard, impenetrable, movable particles of such sizes and figures, and with such other properties, and in such proportion to space, as most conduce to the end for which we formed them, and that these primitive particles, being solid, are incomparably harder than any porous bodies compounded of them, even so very hard as never to wear or break in pieces, no ordinary power being able to divide what God had made one in the first creation. Quote end. Berkeley, another scientist from the 17th century, noticed God implemented in us. Leibniz asked about God, his variety, heterogeneity, multiplicity, plurality. Is our search for God too narrow? Why do some philosophers espouse pantheisms? Pantheism's claim is not shy. God is the cosmos and the cosmos is God. But does renaming all that exists God add understanding? Can the new name make the world sacred? What is gained and what is lost if a theist becomes a pantheist? Quantitum God in future, or relation to a person, not a person, God now? This is theory of today. Our world is complex, filled with so much stuff. But down below, what's most fundamental, what is ultimate reality? Ultimate reality is like variety, consciousness, which complements quantum mechanics, sensitivity to reality and totality of the universe. Naturality. Is there anything non-physical, anything spiritual, or only the physical world? Many feel certain of their belief on each side of controversial question. Here's the big question about consciousness, our inner experience of what things feel like. Is consciousness a product of the physical world alone? Because if consciousness is the output of the physical brain by itself, however complex, the consciousness as physicalism would defeat those who believe or hope for the existence of non-physical realities. What else to say? There are limitations that we are not able to overcome on our own. I would mention here the so-called event horizon. Is the maximum distance a light signal can travel since the Big Bang. Thanks to photos of various galaxies made on the basis of the Webb probe of today, we find out about the beauty of the universe. While observing the physics of the cosmos, we admire the universe in its macroscale and microscale. By no means the quantum theory of matter humiliates us. We are not able to predict the place of elementary particles in the geometry of the universe, if they occupy any place at all. Thus, I will say that it is impossible to circumvent the shadows of our life without relying on God's interference in the history of the cosmos. Thank you for your attention and cooperation.